Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. One of the greatest aspects of the transportation industry, I personally believe, is the people, and the people that are obviously working within the industry. So millions and millions of people work directly and indirectly in our industry. Some realize it, and honestly, some don't. But as people, it's crucial we understand we have a choice on how we respond to stressful situations, and especially when you can't avoid the situation altogether. So in today's episode, I'm really excited to speak with Rita Smith, the owner of Road Warrior News, honestly, a true industry advocate. During our conversation, we dive into what is stress and highlight the current stresses in the transportation industry, while Rita shares practical advice of how we can navigate through situations that we can't always get out of. Rita's journey over the last 30 plus years is amazing. And I believe you're going to receive so much value from our conversation today. So I highly recommend you visit roadwarriornews.com to learn more, as well as contact Rita directly at roadwarriornews@rogers.com. So if this is the first time you've ever checked out a Truck Focus podcast, I welcome you to our community, and to all of our dedicated listeners, I just wanted to say thanks again for just your investment of time and all of the support. So make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel you're listening to, and share it out, because I really do believe that all the advice that Rita shares today is super impactful. So let's get this conversation started. I'm excited to really dive into the quote unquote stress of our industry, because this is another area where you thrive in. So can you, I guess, highlight first off, what is stress? And in your very educated and well-researched opinion, what's the stress level of the transportation industry right now, do you think?
You know what? I was preparing for that question in advance of this interview. Here's one of the things, one of the really important to each individual person listening. This is a really important point, okay? My quick definition of stress is that stress is, and this is sort of my Dale Carnegie mental health first aid volunteer person who I'm not a professional, I'm not a psychologist, I'm none of those things, but we'll talk a little bit about how stress finds me, and mental health issues find me too, which is why I've taken as much training as I have. So stress is something that demands a response from you, okay? That would be the quickest definition of stress. If a person or a situation, a piece of information, some life event requires a response from you, right? Demands a response. That's stressful. There's positive stress and there's negative stress. As people like to point out, getting a promotion is stressful. Getting married is stressful. Buying a new house is stressful. Mm-hmm. Starting a new job is stressful. Most people would consider that to be good news, but it's still stressful, right? It's still stressful. Yes. It demands a response from you. You have to change, you have to act, you have to think differently. You have to become responsible for a whole new situation. So anything that demands a response from you is stressful. So then you get into the situations where the control of the situation is internal with you or external, let's say with a border guard, okay? You cannot always be in control of things that stress you. You can decide whether or not to take a new job, or decide whether or not to get married or buy a new house, but you don't get to decide, truckers now have to show vaccine passports at the border. That's not your decision. Mm-hmm. What is your decision in a stressful situation is how you approach it, your attitude in dealing with that stress. That is not an industry-wide response. That's a person. That's you, Josh. That's me, Rita. What goes on between our ears, in our minds when we look at a stressful situation will determine how stressful we find that situation, right? So I really want to talk about, there's lots of tools and techniques and things that you can use to manage stressful situations. I get into detail on some of that. The main thing that I would like your listeners to keep in mind now and always is you might not get to choose. You don't get to choose. You won't get to choose every situation that you're in, but you get to choose your attitude. Okay. You get to choose your thinking. Would you agree?
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah.
So the analogy I used to use with my classes, which I think people to this day have found really helpful, because I know people will send me surfing pictures every now and then. Somebody that graduated 10 years ago will send me a photo to say, I was thinking of you today, is a surfer standing on a beach, a person standing on a beach. If you are standing on the shoreline of the ocean and you're watching a wave come barreling straight at you, a big one, 40 or 50 or 90 feet high wave is bearing down upon you as you stand on the beach, and you don't know how to swim, your response is going to be panic, right? You go, oh my God, we're going to drown. It's a tsunami. We're all going to drown. It's the end. Oh no. If you don't know how to swim and you're watching a wave come bearing down upon you. A surfer, on the other hand, a surfer who's been waiting all year for this wave, who's in a wetsuit with a surfboard under his arm, looks at the exact same wave and goes, cowabunga, this is awesome. I've been waiting all year for this. And they don't just stand there on the beach waiting for the wave to knock them over and drown them. They run out to meet it, right? They run out to meet it. They bend the laws of physics to their will. They're up on their board. They're hanging five. They're having a blast, like the best time they've ever had, with the exact same wave, right? It's the exact same wave. The wave is not what determines the stress or the lack of stress or even the enthusiasm in the situation. What determines the level of stress is what goes on inside the minds of those two people, right?
Yes.
Does that sound like a fair analogy
Yes.
to you? Okay.
Yes.
So in any industry where people are working, there is stress and more stress. Some of it people have control of, and some of it they don't. But the successful people that I talk to in any industry, and it's really fun to see the difference between taxi drivers and truck drivers. The successful people who've lasted the years, they're not in their first year on the job. They're not in their 15th year on the job. They've been doing it 30 or 40 years. They're still making a good living. They're still safe after all this time. The words that come out of their mouth are phenomenally wise. I could write a whole book just on the things I've learned from cab drivers and the things I'm learning from truckers.
Yes.
So the people who have been through it, listen to those people, and you'll see it's not worth, this too shall pass. This is not worth panicking over. But if you're going to work in industries, let's just say if you're going to breathe air on planet Earth, you need to gain skill sets to learn how to manage your stress. That nobody can avoid that. If you're not willing to put some effort into learning how to manage your stress, you will be stressed all the time. You will feel out of control. You will feel victimized. You will feel hard done by. You'll sound like a whiner. People won't want to be around you because you're whining all the time. So it all comes down to your attitude and the choices that you make.
Yes.
That's my theory, which is mine. There will be other people who will argue with me.
I completely agree. And I think misery loves company. And think if you're in an environment, I like the fact that you talked about like those that have been doing it for a long time and just the guidance that they'll share, because I'm a huge believer in mentors, and I'm a huge believer in allowing your brain to be a sponge to the right information and really monitor. I think right now is a perfect time and a perfect example of just professional drivers have gone through a lot for the last 2 years. And right now is just kind of almost a cherry on the cake, where you really need to look at who's giving you the advice, because it's easy for, if we want to talk about trucking companies, for the safety guy to preach all these things, but yet he sneezes and he doesn't wash his hands after. Now you got to watch that, but also who's living in doom and gloom and who's living in opportunity. So that way, you're not bottling it up and you're not all day, every day, you're just talking to people who are equally or more stressed than you and have all these negative things to say. I think it's just wearing like too many jackets in the summer day. Like you're just going to be like freaking yourself out. But I really agree with what you said and it really aligned. And it's funny when you're talking about attitude, and it made me think of we started in grade 8 basketball coach, where he would be screaming at us, attitude's everything, when we're crying because our legs were so sore from all these drills. And it's really no different to today, where you have to go through emotions, but you can't control every environment you're in, but you can control your attitude and how you respond to it. So I think you're absolutely right. I really appreciate that definition.